Hey pumpkins! Today we're going to discuss something that's a little bit scary, a little bit controversial, but a lot of fun. We're talking about talking boards, also known as Ouija boards or spirit boards. The Ouija board is a brand name, and I believe currently has the copyright on Ouija boards. So we're going to just refer to them as talking boards, although spirit boards is also common. When you bring up this subject within a spiritual community, you hear people say, oh no, those are negative energy and they attract low level spirits and are, low vibrations, and spirits attach themselves to you and you can end up with all sorts of problems. And when used properly, they can actually be lovely tools. I've had some beautiful experiences and healing sessions using talking boards, and I think it's important to know what they are, how they work, and how to use them safely before simply writing them off. Like I said, they are trademarked by Hasbro, and you can buy them at any toy store. It is cardboard with ink on it. There is nothing inherently evil about a talking board itself. The planchet is usually plastic or sometimes wood. You can even make them yourself and use the shot glass. So the materials itself, there's nothing inherently evil about them. When you don't know what you're doing, they can be dangerous, and there are warning signs and bad things that can happen, and you'll hear lots of horror stories or lots of ghost reenactment shows talking about the dangers of these. And I do think that if you're going into it without proper preparation, without proper knowledge of how to use it, that you really can end up having problems. How they work, or at least how I believe they work, is that the stronger person, the person with the stronger energy, a spirit will use them as a conduit to direct the planchet. So if you blindfold both participants, you end up getting gibberish on the board because the person who's using the conduit, their eyes are not working to be able to see the letters. Ideally, when you're using these, you want to have two people at least. I would say at least three people. So two people to have their fingers on the planchette, and then one person to record or take notes. I think that's really important to be able to have a record of what happened. But the first thing is really to know that this is not a 101 activity. If you do not have good magic chops, you should not be touching these. These can be dangerous when not used properly. Just think about it like a car. You wouldn't let someone who has no idea how to drive take a car, because they can get into trouble. They can get people hurt, and people can get hurt if they're not doing this properly. So the number one skill that you need to have is really good banishing chops. If you cannot banish, you should not do this. You should be able to cleanse a room completely. You should be able to control the energy within a room, to control your own energy, and to have really good sense of what's around you and what's going on. If you can't do that, do not touch these. To use these talking boards, it takes at least a half hour to set up. You want really good protection, really good banishing to begin with, so it's a flat area energetically. You want really good wards up, you want really good protection. So it's going to take at least a half hour to set up. If you are not doing that setup, you are going to have problems. I would also say that the mood that you're going into this matters. If you are having a day where you're having a lot of anxiety, or you've had a really bad day, or you're scared, that this is probably not a good time to use a talking board. You want to be calm, and part of being a good magician is to be able to control your mood and to control your anxiety levels. If you can't do that, you should not be using these. So there's two things. You need to be experienced and know what you're doing. You need to have good banishing chops, and you need to have abilities to control your own mood. Thirdly, I would say that you should have a purpose for doing this. I've done a session with someone who was adopted, and they wanted some information about their ancestors. So we did a session where we were looking specifically to speak with this person's ancestors, and we had a really lovely session. You don't want to do this where you're just saying, is anyone out there, or if you're doing it just to get scared. If you're doing it just to get scared, you're going to have problems. And then lastly, you need to know how to close the space. Simply putting the planchette on goodbye is not enough. You need to not only say goodbye and close down the board, but you also need to close any doors that have been opened. You need to be able to banish anything that has been called forth. You need to ensure that every person individually is banished so that there is no attachments to anyone. And you need to ensure that the wards are taken down, the protection is taken down. So again, that's about a half hour at least. So at least a half hour to set up, at least a half hour to take down. And once again, if you're not doing these steps, that's when you end up in problems. So I would say that if you are going to be working with a talking board this Samhain season, to make sure you know what you're doing, and to make sure that you have good teams around you to work with them. I would say that, as I mentioned, probably having 2, probably 3 people is best. If you have a group, making sure that everyone is comfortable working together and is on the same page, and you can have a really lovely experience. So if you'd like more information about talking boards, you can feel free to go to my website and ask me some questions. My website is www.carolineironwill.com, and I am available for private tarot readings through Skype or Zoom. Please remember to wash your hands, wear a mask, and have a great day. Bye, pumpkins.